Hi, everyone. Pastor Galen, lead pastor at Cheyenne Hills Church. Thank you so much for joining us on this podcast. We hope that these podcasts will be a real encouragement to you on your spiritual journey. You can also connect with Cheyenne Hills at CheyenneHills.org. Hope you enjoy the program.
We are across the street and around the world, Cheyenne Hills.
Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Julie Fogg, and I'm here this morning with my friend, Tiffany Erickson, and we are going to talk a little bit about children's. But first of all, I wanted to thank you all for hanging with us. We've been absent from podcasts for a week or so, and our lovely producer ended up with COVID, so we've been a little bit on pause. But we are back on schedule, and we will be back with our verse by verse again tomorrow. So anyway, thanks so much for joining us. And Tiffany, thanks for being on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me.
It's really fun to have you here, and it's just so fun to have you on staff. And maybe you can tell our listeners a little bit about you. And you've got some really rich history here at Cheyenne Hills too. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about that.
Sure, yeah. Well, I grew up in Wyoming, so born and raised here. Really love the culture and the community and things. So, went off and did a little bit, but have kind of circled back around when we started having kids and stuff. So anyway, I started off in coming to Cheyenne Hills way back when it was kind of a church plant. My family was kind of a part of that a little bit. And so a long history of just, investing and loving on this church and stuff. But I originally came on staff in, I think it was 2013. Anyway, maybe 8-ish years ago. And I was working with a group of kids called Kids Crew. And so that's kind of a like junior high age group, kind of a leadership development team, essentially. And so worked with them and kind of did worship for the little kids and ended up kind of growing into an uptown coordinator position and kind of managing the elementary age kids, that program a little bit under the direction of Stephanie Snow and stuff. And then, so it's just kind of been this natural development and of kind of coming up and knowing a lot about, our families and our culture here at the church and stuff like that. And then now having this awesome opportunity to kind of direct the program there. So
that's awesome. Well, I'm going to back up a little bit because you said you were kind of a part of the church plant. Well, your grandpa, Richard Larson, was really instrumental in even being on this land that we're on right now, which is really cool. So you were quite a bit more than just a little bit a part of that. But so did you start in the LCCC days or were you even prior to that?
Yep. So I think the meetings that used to happen, I was pretty young at that time, but the meetings that used to happen even before we were at LCCC happened at my aunt and uncle's house sometimes and stuff.
Okay.
So, I think they kind of went around, but yeah. And then we definitely started coming up every once in a while. We still wanted to be a part of our church in the Alban community as well. And so kind of split our time, but did, start driving up on a couple of Sundays and stuff at the LCCC.
So would you have had Dick Young as a pastor when he was in Alban as well?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. So I was really young. I think he might have married my mom and dad. Ooh, I hope that's correct information.
That's pretty awesome.
But yeah, definitely have a long family history of him. And when he was there, I think that's when him and my grandpa kind of their friendship really flourished and stuff. And
they had a really sweet connection too. I know that was a really neat thing. And your grandpa he had such a heart for this church and I think there were 3 of them that really made sure that we got this land and jumped on it when the opportunity popped up, which is so great because we have such a great campus. And as Cheyenne moves east, I don't even know that they knew that at the time, how it was going to really grow east. I think they were thinking more north at that time, if I have my information correct too. But I mean, God's provision in that, and it's pretty cool how he worked through them. So, well, then fast forward a little bit, and you said you became a part of Kids Crew. And I know my daughter Gracie was, I think one of your first ones in
Yep.
that group. And that was
Yep.
such a sweet opportunity for them to be able, or for her specifically, to be under your leadership and just loves you so much. And then one piece that you're missing out that you haven't talked about is like, you are an amazing dancer. And so that just fit perfectly for you to lead that team.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Oh, well, thank you. You're very sweet. That feels a little far removed for me these days, but yeah, I did do a fair amount of dancing and stuff in college and my early adult life, doing the professional dance thing and stuff. So, and that's actually how I got involved with children. It's kind of part of my story that I'm not shy to say, because I think, a lot of people can find themselves in this position, but I wouldn't necessarily have considered myself to be like a kid person or good with kids, or, even the teaching and stuff like that God has really developed in me it's really cool to see that, because that didn't necessarily exist there before. And he, has kind of filled in those cracks and gaps and stuff. So that's pretty cool. But the way that I got involved in it is that the kids crew was kind of designed to be like a dance team essentially for the worship and stuff. So, Steph was like, these are the moves, and they were pretty complicated and stuff. So, kind of siphoning through some of that, those videos and stuff like that, and being able to translate and teach those gals how to lead those worship songs to our kids is how I got kind of looped in and stuff, but then just found just such a sweet spot with the kiddos and just loving on them and, becoming more and more passionate about teaching them the Bible and teaching them who Jesus is, and everything else just kind of waned in comparison to that. And the passion for that. So
I loved that because my girls were a part of Ballet Wyoming, and they got to see you there and see what an amazing performer you are. And then to come here on Sunday mornings and see your love for Jesus just poured out. So I've always appreciated that about you, that you've been able to, I think, bridge that between what can be really two different worlds to be able to bring that together. So I just love that about you. And so now, as we transition, you're the children's director, and just started, I think, mid-July, right? Is that when you took that on? And so maybe tell us a little bit about what's happening in children's. And I know you've got some great vision ahead, and maybe you can tell us a little bit about your values too. That's kind of a lot. So you can start anywhere, really.
I know. Yeah. I've really been taking this opportunity to kind of mull over, what is our mission and our vision and some of those sorts of things. And so it's been a cool process that God has been working with me on, like directing kind of my site and bringing some stuff into focus. So kind of where we've landed is this idea of like 3 E's, that perhaps our mission is to explore with kids, and then engage them, and then empower them. And so hopefully that's sticking. We can kind of remember it, but just, that exploring phase of even a tiny little 6-month-old baby can really explore the love of Christ if that volunteer has the spirit of Jesus in them, and that comes out in just the way that they're, playing and holding and hugging and caring for them in a moment that might be kind of scary when mom drops them off or whatever, that can be that introduction of exploring, but that can be translated all the way up to like 6th grade, if this whole God thing is new and I just want to explore and stuff. It's a very safe place back there. And some of the values kind of add to that, but make it a safe place to really explore and investigate sort of, those early on, but really quickly turning it into a place of like engagement. So I'm, very passionate about engaging kids. So as opposed to kind of being the wah, 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 talking in front of them, but making it relational, asking them questions, letting them ask, the teacher questions, and sort of engaging. And even the worship that we do engages little tiny 2-year-olds in actions. Can a 2-year-old do this when they're singing Jesus? Yeah, they can, And so, leading by example, and, Kids Crew was a huge part of that because kids recognize kids. And so the kiddos would come in there and do the actions and engage those little tiny ones. It's so cool. So proud of them that they would be able to participate. And that's all in an effort to really encourage them in a spirit-led commitment, right? Faith commitment to Jesus. Like hoping that even now the kiddos would, because as they grow up, they're developing their understanding of spirituality and who Jesus is and all of those sorts of things. And when they're ready, I love the idea of young kids making that faith commitment, because I think the sooner, with everything that they deal with in the world and all the noise of everything else and the relative truths and things like that, that they're, if we can kind of come alongside them and equip them with the Holy Spirit. Yeah. And anyway, I'm really passionate about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And, one of the things that I think is maybe unique to Cheyenne Hills Church, I'm not sure, as far as children's ministries go across the country, and that Stephanie Snow had set this up and you are continuing that on, is how young we start with really exposing kids to who Jesus is, and where it's not just a daycare on Sunday mornings, for lack of a better word, that we're actually, the Kids Crew would go in, and I'm not sure if that will be something that will happen this post-COVID type time, but that they would go in and do worship time with them, and they do have teaching, I think, starting as young as 2. I don't know, maybe if you're down to even younger than that, but just really having that value, I think, is so important, and it sets them up for that church is a special time, and it's not just a playtime, but really getting to know Jesus in that engagement type structure that you're talking about.
Yeah. And I think that, it's super cool because God designed the institution of the family, and he designed the institution of the church, and to kind of combine those in the lives of a kid, to just amplify the truth that's in the Bible. It's really confusing being a kid right now, and you're, coming in contact with some subject matter and some situations and things like that can be confusing and difficult for a child's mind to even comprehend. But if you have mom saying the same thing, and, teacher at Sunday school is saying a similar thing, and stuff that's just a way for the church to be even louder than the world. And in today's day and age, I think that we can't, shy away from that. We really need to band together and be that loud voice, and, that solid, clear communication of this is God's best.
Yes, absolutely. And, I love that, how easy it is to outsource. This may be a shock to you, but I've outsourced the dance instruction of my girls to you in the studio, and, because I'm not going to teach them that, but it can be easy to outsource our faith. And, we're going to church on Sunday mornings, and so that's where they're getting their Jesus time, for lack of a better word. But really it needs to be interwoven into everything that we do. And the curriculum that you have sets up for that really well, that you're able to give parents some tools and equip them in, especially if it's a new walk for them as well. So, and sometimes it's hard as a parent to really know, like, well, how do I talk to them about all of these things of the Lord, and how can I narrow that down, and how can we partner alongside them? So I think that's really important.
Yeah.
So maybe tell us a little bit about, I know that we're looking at opening the 11 o'clock soon, September 12th. Maybe you can talk a little bit about kind of what you've got going on currently in children's ministry.
Yeah. So right now we're just, pushing kind of for looking for volunteers and anybody that God would be calling into that role. And so, when I first came on board last month, I sat down with my team and we came up with a number. And what would that number be to be fully covered, where people have backups and there's enough subs that people can
Oh, yeah.
go on vacation and not feel guilty and, things like that. And so that number was in the 40s.
Mhm.
And our church family is so awesome. And
Yeah.
they are really responding, and being obedient to that call and stuff. So our number is more in the 20s now.
That's
so
amazing.
Isn't that so cool?
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, thank you so much.
Yeah. And that's such a hard, there's different positions and we are struggling volunteer wise, just kind of across the board with COVID. And it's been just a new, unique challenge that we have, but to be able to raise that number, it is a much different calling and sometimes more difficult calling to serve in children's ministry, and just the time, even that is a little bit different. So that's an amazing number to have filled so far.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm excited for them too, because I just, if I can speak to my own experience of, it being like, I'm not a kid person. I don't know, and then going into that situation and being able to, I would look at the curriculum, and that's something, that is important to know is we try to set up our volunteers as much as possible so that they can come in on Sunday morning and everything's done for them. Their bin is prepared, all that kind of stuff. But, my brain liked to kind of prepare a little bit. So I'd hop online and look at the curriculum and just kind of prep myself. And it was so cool how the Holy Spirit would, put something in front of my eyeballs, like, hey, talk about this tomorrow. And I'd be like, okay, sure. And, be obedient to that. And sure enough, that was something that really connected with the kids, or maybe it was one kid that kind of, oh my gosh, that just happened to me, or, if it was a personal experience or something. And so just so cool and fun to see. I read a meme about a week ago that was like, these are God's kids, and he cares more about them than even I care about my kids as a mom, and how amazing is that? And so
hard to fathom,
Julie,
Yeah.
but thank goodness, because I just, all the places I'm falling short as a mom, God's picking up and providing. And even if it's coming from a Sunday school teacher who's like, I don't know if this is going to be anything, but presents it. And then it's this really cool way that God's reaching into their little lives and speaking to them where they're at. So
It's so rewarding and certainly challenging at times, but the investment in our next generation is so worth it. And I'm so glad that you are here and taking that on. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about some goals that you have for the future for children's ministry.
Yeah. Well, something that's definitely on the front of, I've got kind of a whole stack. So what's on the top of the stack is kind of discovering so once we've got our volunteers and we're able to offer that 11 o'clock, of course, that's top priority.
Sure.
But then two other things are high on my radar. And so one of them would be just how we're connecting as a volunteer team and, kind of coming alongside. I really like to collaborate, and I really like to be relational with the people that we're working side by side with. And so, what you bring to the table as a unique individual with your unique experiences is super valuable to me. And so how can we, be working better as a team and with our communication and being able to brainstorm and just improve and be always on the up hill sort of thing. So, but then also, being relational so that those volunteers know how much I appreciate them.
Sure.
And so, because that's a very real feeling, and just being able to communicate that in a way that they can feel it and know it and stuff. So that's definitely high on my priority list, is to kind of work within that team. And then the other one is to figure out ways to better partner with parents. So I liked what you said about the outsourcing. And, I think that even I was talking with my mom, and she even admitted, back in the day, we kind of, this was, and I was like, I don't know that that's totally true that you outsourced all the time, Mom, because, it was still a part of day in and day out stuff, because she was living out her faith. And so we would pray with her, and we'd see her reading her Bible, and she'd read to us and stuff. But I think that, we as parents, we can't miss the opportunity. We've got such a short amount of time with our kiddos. There's an app that we use in children's called the Parent Queue app. And so you can put in your kid and what their birth date is and stuff like that. And it shows on there how many days you have left with them. And it's like heartbreaking.
I don't know that I want to see that. That's terrible.
It's terrible. You can turn it off. I just discovered. I was like, what if I don't want to have this reminder as my little girl is getting older and older?
Oh, yeah.
But it is kind of one of those things that I think, every once in a while we just need to be reminded that time is fleeting with them and how we're equipping them to go into the world and to be powerful movers for the kingdom. And it is really important. And while we get 1 hour with them on Sundays, which is awesome, and we need to make that the most powerful hour we possibly can.
Sure.
If we can partner with parents and equip them and communicate what's going on in Sunday school, and so that they can continue that work throughout the day and the week, how much more is that amplified for those kids?
Absolutely.
To get on the same page. So, things like social media and that app is a really cool one. And just those communications, the God time card and things like that, which is like a little devotional that goes home with kiddos so that parents can continue that work with them. Yeah. It kind of comes back to Deuteronomy. I think it's 6:4 that talks about talk about these truths when they go to bed and when they walk along the road and things like that. And we're not, as Sunday school teachers, we're not there with them when they wake up. And so what are really cool, intentional, but real life tools that you can give a busy mom as she's getting going in the morning with her kids? How can we weave Jesus into that and make that a habit?
Yeah.
So
that's awesome. Well, and I think that it can be overwhelming because you think about all the things they have to do, and then and not making it required. We have to sit down, and depending on the ages of your kids, it may be more difficult, but that, as we are getting up in the morning, or as we're going to school, or at the end of the day, or all those things of how can we see Jesus woven into our day, and how can we choose him in situations. And I think that's great. And, I had a friend years and years ago who said, when my kids were little, the days are long, but the years are short. And I was like, oh my goodness, that is so true, because it does go so fast, but yet it feels like we're drudging each day. And so making the most of those opportunities while we have those days is really important. So you have an amazing video that Casey, our producer, put together, interviewing some of your teachers and having videos of the kids in children's ministry. And so we're going to close the podcast with that. But any final words that you might have of just anything in children's or anything at all?
I think, I'm just really excited for what this, the rest of this year looks like, and the start of school and stuff like that. But man, if it's on your heart to just pray for kids and families and stuff, it's an interesting world to be raising kiddos in. And, but God is bigger.
Absolutely. Well, Tiff, thanks so much for joining us. Thanks for being a part of the podcast. And as you go about your day, be strong and very courageous.
Part of what brought me into children's ministry early on is as I was a new Christian some 20 years ago, and as I was dropping off my child in the 2-year-old classroom, I realized that I would probably do just as well to do my part.
I'm pretty okay with children because I do it for a profession. And I really felt the tug of the heart to try volunteering in the church. And I remember just sitting in the service, and I knew that they needed volunteers, and I knew that was my skill set. But I just remember thinking ugh, no, I am not the Sunday school teacher type.
I organize the volunteers and get their curriculum ready for them. When they walk in the room, all they have to do is go through their bin. And it starts out with the first thing you do, and it goes to the second thing you do. We have all the crafts prepared for them.
And my first day, I remember I was being trained, and they handed me my basket and everything was done. I looked at that, I thought, huh.
But I tell you what, it's so easy to step into this role and teach these kids. All you need is a heart for God and a heart for these kids. It's just bring your heart and God will equip you.
And you don't have to be a professional teacher to serve in children's ministry. They just love that you're there and that you'll play with them and hang out with them and sing with them.
Don't know if you can do it? Go sit down in that classroom and grab a toy or grab a book and wait and see just how many will just come and sit down next to you or want to share in that moment.
I do believe that the Lord is calling the church to be in a position and a posture of coming alongside families and just fortifying them and amplifying what is in the Word of God.
That's why we're here, is to come alongside these children, to teach them these things that really you aren't finding anywhere else.
It makes me think of the parable of the sower. We just want that soil to be ready. So when the seed of gospel is talked to with them and they are learning about the Lord, that it will take root and flourish.
Even the most difficult of classes, I come out of it feeling like I've made an impact, feel like that my heart has been filled, and feel like I may have assisted their parents in moving that ball forward a little bit for Jesus.
Suddenly feel more connected with the church community too. You know, I've had people come up to me and go, oh, you're my kid's Sunday school teacher. They just love your class.
But I started way back in the day when these guys were so young, and you see them come up grade after grade after grade, and you see them mature more and more and more. Now you see them in there memorizing scripture.
If somebody's on the fence, not sure where to plug in, children's ministry needs you. And until you give it a try, you don't know what you're missing.